Hello, everyone. This is Chase Sowards, Johnny Lau, Nathan Meredith, and Cameron Patberg coming at you today. We're going to be talking about continual service improvement and how that fits into ITIL and how we can be able to use continual service improvement to improve our IT infrastructure. And so we're going to be using a lot of comparisons to BYU football just because we feel like that will make it easier to understand as we compare it to continual service improvement with IT. So to start off using the example, BYU, what every company, every organization, everyone needs a goal or a purpose. And so BYU, for example, their purpose would be something like winning for sure, satisfying their fans, keeping them happy. And you could say for any business that is involved with information technology that their purpose or their service as well is maintaining value for their customers. And so the way this is done with continuous service improvement is on a day-to-day basis, continually evaluating and looking for ways to improve the quality of the services that you're providing. And so to start off, if you look on this chart on the right, you need to have a vision. What is your business vision? Where do you want to be? Where are we now? And then where do we want to be? And then we got to plan how we're going to get there, and after evaluate what we did to get there. And so this is, if we can get this going on a day-to-day basis, this is what's going to give our company momentum. And so that is the purpose of continuous service improvement, is to identify the gaps between your long-term objectives and compare that to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so we're going to go into more depth on how this can be done. So we have a seven-step improvement process that can IT can use in order to help the business succeed and accomplish their business objectives. And so it all kind of starts off with having goals in mind. You got to understand the vision, the strategy, tactical goals, operational goals. And then there's seven steps that we are going to explain to you today, such as going in order: define what you should measure, define what you can measure, gather the data, process the data, analyze the data, present and use the information, and implement corrective action. And this is just a cycle that should just be reoccurring constantly within IT. And if any IT organization can do this, it will successfully help them be able to provide great value for their business.
So for the first couple of steps for the continuous service improvement is defining what you should measure and can measure. Answering this question is about performing a measurement in order to create a baseline upon which improvement efforts can be measured. For example, one of the first improvement activities should be identified is what should be measured versus what can be measured or what is currently being measured. Many of these organizations have been measuring reports on the same things for years. For example, they don't step back to ask for themselves if they're measuring the right things. And the assessments can be done on the availability or the performance of the IT services or the processes itself. So when we look at what should be measured, we look at the assessments and are they meaningful or do they fully support the organizational goals? And then after that, what can be measured? We can perform a gap analysis and highlighting the certain gaps or risks that might be involved, and are the measurements that is provided are they ideally realistic? For example, if we look at BYU football, like the goal is to win. We look at what measurements um, we we can look at. For example, the offense, the defense, the special teams, the coaches, how well are they performing their duties, or how well is the offense running? And you can also measure certain things like are the players mentally ready? And then you look at what can be measured now. With that, you can look at the risk of, for example, a quarterback throwing interceptions. You can look at, is the offensive line protecting the quarterback long enough, or is the quarterback just a lane passer? And if you look at something that's ideally realistic to measure, for example, like the motivation of players, you can't really measure the motivation of players. So, yep.
Okay, so the third step is gathering the data, which covers both monitoring and collection. After you defined the measurements to be taken in the previous two steps, you need to have tools and processes in place to collect the data. The key objective for monitoring continual service improvement is qualitative data. This process focuses on the effectiveness of a service, process, tool, or organization, but also in identifying if there are improvements that could be made to existing services. Two things it looks for is determining if the current level of performance can be sustained, but at a lower cost, or if it needs to be upgraded to a higher level completely. Looking at BYU football, simply gathering every stat on every football player is not a very useful way of collecting data. However, focusing on the stats involving interceptions and fumbles can help hone your results to show you where your faults lie or why your team is not winning. After gathering the information, often people will go straight to trying to analyze it. This is a mistake, as processing the data is a very important step. The raw data needs to be converted into a format that can actually be used, which provides an end-to-end perspective on the performance of services on a larger scale. The final step is analyzing the data. Data analysis transforms the information into knowledge that can help answer questions that are affecting the organization. Some questions that can now be answered from the data could include: are we meeting targets? Are there any clear trends? Are corrective actions required? What is the cost? For BYU, now that you can see which teams they are winning or losing against and how many interceptions or fumbles they had per game, you can compare and see if there are just some teams we cannot beat.
So now we have to take the information gathered and present it to the team or the coaches, whoever we're presenting to. So we can take different video clips from the last game and we can present them that help them make strategic decisions, overall game decisions before you even start or for the opposing team. Tactical being plays, how we carry out different plays, operational being the in the moment choices that the quarterback has to make. This information also has to be presented in the right way. It has to provide value for who we're presenting it to. It has to know any exceptions, exceptional plays, one-time things that happen, and all. We also need to highlight the benefits, the good plays, the good things the team is doing. Along with that, we have to show understanding that we understand what the goal is and how these things, these metrics that we've gathered can benefit and the team and improve. So now we need to take that information and knowledge gathered and implement it into corrective action and practices, improving the team, plays, our overall strategy, things like that. So we take that knowledge and we use it to optimize, improve, and correct any processes, services, activities, and technology in the overall IT infrastructure setup. And then we start back to step one within this process because it is continual. The next part we're going to talk about is service measurement and why it's important. First off, with our football analogy, it's important to have this measurement so we know if our practices are worthwhile, if they're actually moving us towards our goals, towards winning. So, in other words, it helps us validate previous decisions, direct our practices or activities to meet the next goals, and to intervene and take action if we need to, if our practices just aren't quite cutting out for what we need. Some of the metrics in most IT organizations include the tech metrics, the component and application based things that measure performance, availability. Also, processes. We have things that measure our critical success factors, the key performance indicators, and activity metrics within the company. And also, we have the service metrics, which are the results of everything, which is just computed with the technology metrics we have gathered previously.
So the last part we have here is service reporting, and this is important because it kind of ties into a lot of the steps for a continual service improvement. And I guess the main question we need to ask ourselves is, what does a business expect to see from service reports? What does a business expect to see in their reports from IT? And the main thing we found was reports should focus strongly on the past as it does the future. So in football or any sport, you can see that mistakes are made clearly all the time. But the question is, what are we going to do about those mistakes? How are we going to improve on those mistakes? How are we going to be better? And if you look at that as from a business aspect, they want to know the threats, they want to identify the threats, and then move forward. So when creating a report, we should ask ourselves questions like what happened and what did IT do to resolve the problem, or what may happen. And then we got to look at it as if moving forward, and we need to ask ourselves other questions like how IT will ensure that a mistake won't happen again, or how IT is working to improve a service delivery. And so the main idea is looking to the past and then looking forward, projecting where we're going to go and how this aligns with the vision of the company. And all when we do this, we're definitely going to add value. And that's where we add quality to our service and make improvements to the entire company. All right, well, that's about it. Thank you for your time for watching our presentation. And we hope this helps you understand continual service improvement a little better. Thanks very much. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.